Now, Kevin Sheehan joins us. Look ahead to the 2026 National League and maybe a little bit beyond as well. Kevin, new year, new sheet. It wipes everything clean. Is that the approach Clare will be taking?
Yeah, I think so. I think they'll probably have been glad of I suppose a quiet December to start preparing again. Obviously the year before was all that went on, and Northern Ireland needing to be celebrating. I suppose that can maybe push back plans a little bit, but I'm sure that they would have knuckled back quite early and been happy enough to, I suppose, maybe step back into that long grass a little bit to plan for a long year ahead.
And I know the narrative will always be that, we're not looking back on last year and we're not. But within the camp, do you think it'll be a reference much?
I suppose there's probably, I suppose, if you look back to the basics of controllables and uncontrollables, I suppose maybe they'll dig into a little bit, what went wrong or why it went wrong. But they had an awful lot of injuries, and look, some of our key players were out in very important matches. So that's a complete uncontrollable. But they will look at the end of every year. You have to have an honest review and I suppose dig back to where the weaknesses were. And when you're winning, I suppose it's harder to find those. And I'm certain that there would have been, I suppose, a couple of meetings in management side where they would have sat down and maybe planned where they needed to, I suppose, look at some of their strengths and how to strengthen them, and then a couple of weaknesses and maybe around the field or whatever they felt were weaknesses in terms of building out the panel and maybe finding a bit more depth to I suppose be ready for that Munster Championship when it does roll around.
And if you're one of these younger players in the group and you see all the stars committing again for another season at it, I think that's a huge vote of confidence in, number one, the setup that's there, but two, I guess, the drive that's going to be there this year to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose you've mentioned a couple of things there. I suppose, experience in one way, you have to learn it as you go. But for these younger fellas, every minute they get in the dressing room, with the likes of the Tony Kellys and the Shane O'Donnells, will be hugely valuable for them, as they step up into that leadership role across the next 3 or 4 years. And I suppose, in terms of, they know that chances are going to be, they're not going to come around often. So if anyone gets a jersey, there's no choice but to perform because, outside of the next young fella that's coming, up your back, there's also going to be an established, All-Ireland winner coming down the road pretty quickly. So it does create a real fierce, I suppose, internal rivalry within the dressing room to try and get a hold of a jersey. And, that's a very, very healthy place to be.
And you mentioned there quite December to start off the year, but also in a lot of ways Division 1B is going to be quiet, maybe in a profile sense. Obviously the likes of us locally will be delving into it and covering it and all the rest of it, but in a national sense, the spotlight will be on Thurles, Páirc Uí Chaoimh, the Gaelic grounds, not maybe so much Newbridge and Netwatch Cullen Park. So is this a real opportunity for Clare to build up a nice little head of steam somewhat under the radar?
Yeah, absolutely. Whereas as you said in Division 1A, every weekend brings its own challenges, and you're really facing the top teams in the country. You look down through the list of opposition over the next couple of weeks, and you'd say Dublin first up is going to be a real battle of high intensity and a game that I suppose both teams will feel if they can get over that with a win, it'll really push them out towards going back up to Division 1A. And then I suppose the last game with Wexford will kind of have the same narrative. The teams in the middle, with all due respect, I suppose, Antrim away and Dunloy will be a very serious test in terms of geographically and the big physical challenge that will cause. But there is a bit of leeway within that group to, I suppose, maybe play more of the untested players and get a better feel for them, as you would have in Division 1A, where a result goes against you here and there, and next thing you have to strengthen up a bit more to try and get those points on the board.
But also, whether it be a 1B title or whatever it is, still a bit of silverware on a bus coming home from a big stadium. I know that's a long way down the road, but to be facing into a Munster Championship with a winning smell in the nostrils wouldn't be a bad place to be.
No, absolutely not. Look at it. I suppose when hurleys are hung up. The amount of silverware in cabinets can often be not a true reflection of the career you've given. So anything at all that you can put in is a positive. And I suppose the one caveat for that is, throwing everything at Dublin or Wexford in whatever way you see fit has a comfort. If say it was a Cork and a Tip in the group, you're probably still a little bit cagey of showing them too much. So it does, like, it is in that regard, having the two, I suppose, the two main contenders within the group being from Leinster, it just gives a little bit more leeway to I suppose, express yourself a little bit more than maybe you would against a Munster rival, because that is a championship that comes on so quick.
Do you expect both Dublin and Clare to go pretty strong this weekend?
I would, yeah. I suppose Dublin are in a good place. I know they, contesting the final there last weekend. They'll feel they're in a decent place, and they did a good year last year. I suppose turning over Limerick was a big result for them. I suppose something over the last couple of years they weren't really turning over, I suppose, the top tier teams. So they'll feel they're in a good place. And then I suppose for Clare, being on an Ennis, and they probably have a good bit of work done, so they'll feel that they'll really want to put in a good showing there and try and get points on the board, because points on the board in leagues as early as possible make life a lot easier as it comes down to home straight.
And also for Dublin, the motivation of coming from Ennis with 2 points, that's 2 on the board, an away game out of the way, and 3 more to come at home, so it could be a massive platform for them.
Yeah, as you said, like, they're looking realistically, there's a three-way fight in this group between Clare, Wexford, and Dublin. So, they're very, very important games to try and get one. And if you do lose initially to Dublin, look, it's absolutely not the end of the world, but I suppose it throws an awful lot more spotlight on the games to come, and just adds a little bit more pressure going up to Antrim. And look, at and all that being said, I suppose that there is a clarity there that it is just the start of the league. It's not where any of the initial conversations will be had in terms of where they want to go this year. So look, there'll be no drastic ties turn out of the pram or anything, but we will be hoping that this weekend we'd see Clare back, good touch, moving the ball well, tidy at the back, disciplined, and all the, I suppose, the basics that you put down before you add the layers on top.
And is it a year where there's a sense that maybe there's a couple of players that are around the panel for 3 or 4 seasons, without getting into naming names, but we can think of a few of them, like that this is their year now to kind of kick on, because it has come time to.
Yeah, there really is that. A lot of players brought in, I suppose, not long out of minor, 19, 20 years of age. It does take a couple of years to get up to that speed of intercounty hurling. Very few players rock straight in. Look, it does happen, but they are normally some of the best players to hurl that can just slip straight into it. The likes of Adam Hogan probably comes to mind, but for the vast majority of players, it really is, a little bit of an apprenticeship. And the problem with that is if you don't grasp it within kind of that 3rd to 4th year, the next set of minors are coming, and the next prospects are starting to express themselves. So yeah, it really is time now. If you are in that 3rd or 4th year within the panel, it's time to, I suppose, stand up and try and grab a jersey. And there should really be the hunger within them to know that it won't last forever, having this, I suppose, the core of the team we have at the moment. And there's a real opportunity there again this year. Like, if we stay injury free and you compete like we always do, we'll be there and thereabouts, you would hope. So these players, really, that should be their goal, to try and get into that team, knowing that while the end isn't near. I suppose for the core of this team, there's couple of more years left in it, and we've huge talent coming through, so we'll always remain at the top table. But there is an opportunity right now for silverware, so for those players, they really need to I suppose grab these opportunities over the next few weeks.